And I will double check if we are already on air. Just let me a second. Yeah.
It says live on
That's
custom live streaming service.
Yeah, finally we did this. So, hi everyone. That's episode 5 of the first season of Postgres TV. Today I would be hosting this session alone because Nikolai needs urgently to travel. And today our guest is the famous Hans-Jürgen Schönig from Cybertech, who will explain us a couple of interesting things. Hi, Hans-Jürgen. Good to see you.
Hello, thank you for having me, Ilya. Good to see you again, actually.
Yes, because, those Corona times, we do not see each other as frequently as we do normally.
That's true.
Traveling around the globe. But, well, anyway, I hope something would be better with some time.
We've seen some Russian vaccine already here. So
I would be careful with that stuff. You see, I know what I'm talking about. For those who join us just recently, I see it looks like 7 people starting to watch us. I cannot advise to watch what we're talking about, but well, it's your choice. We try to make that interesting, and you can ask questions in YouTube. In the chat, you can feel free to join us in Zoom. Just raise your hand and say, well, I disagree with Hans-Jürgen, I think this and that. And I will try to moderate this as hard as I can. So, Hans-Jürgen, as usually then we start Postgres TV, or should I say Postgres TV in this case. How did you run into Postgres? How you started with this?
Well, that's a bit of an obscure story. How did I get started with Postgres?
Yes, that's why we're asking everyone about this.
It was in 1999. And for most people on this planet, a year has 12 months. In Austria, in the Austrian social security system, a year has 14 months, because if you are a refugee coming from somewhere and you just end up in a refugee camp, and if you don't have birth certificates and stuff like that, they're going to assign you a virtual birthday in the 13th month. And when you try to do age calculations and when you try to do some mathematics on dates, like how old are you, how many people are born in which month, you cannot put 14 months into an Oracle timestamp, can you? So, we created basically some sort of Postgres logic for handling 14th months in the Austrian social security system. And that's how I got started with Postgres. And it's such an obscure story that I'm not capable of making it up.
I would say, even talking about European bureaucracy, it's not easy to make this up.
No.
It's impressive. So basically, you used to work for Austrian government that time, and
no, let's not start with an insult.
Okay.
No, I used to work for a private company, faking government labor market statistics. So it was private. I was actually employed for 2 years in my life, and this is when I ran into this stuff. And first it was proprietary thing, but then it started to be Postgres for this obscure reason. I'm sorry.
Okay, so that's how you started, and since that time, as far as I understand, you're making professionally Postgres support and all these travel circles we usually do with customers and so on and so on. So you first started to work with Postgres version like it was
6.4.
6.4, yeah.
Yeah, and we had one guy in the team who started with Postgres 95. The elderly will remember.
Okay, so what was actually at that time the main challenge in administering Postgres?
Well, I would say that the documentation, I think back then it was written by a guy called Thomas Lockhart, was 200 pages, but it was only headers. There was basically no content, so there was basically no documentation. I would say that that's the hardest part.
So things have definitely changed since that.
Yeah, it's just 4,000 pages difference or so.
But as far as I remember, I started with Postgres slightly later. That was already 7 something. Actually, some things like Wacom was not that easy that time, like it is now. Backups. So what was the good practice of administering Postgres that time? How did you done backups in version 6?
That was pre-transaction log, actually, because transaction log came, I think, in 7.1 or something like that. That was actually pre-transaction log. And to put it mildly, just copy the bloody files over. That's it. Okay. Just shut down the books and just no sophistication.
Oh, interesting.
Static data. It was static data. That makes it easy. There's no need for real backup because it was static government data. So just shut down the thing and just copy it over or reproduce it or do anything.
So now it's much better, but I'm afraid with government data, it's still something like this.
There was no such thing as administration.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. So what changed since that time? So now then you're facing some challenging problem with a customer. What is maybe number one from your point of view? What's the main problem of administering Postgres now than you do it at scale?
Well, administration has become a lot easier because a lot of things got automated, auto vacuum, and there's a lot of tooling out there. And basically, as far as I see, most people we're working with are having some sort of performance problem. This is how we got started. As far as administration is concerned, it depends on how you're running it. It could be related to the size of data or something like that. But I would say that most people are usually more on the performance side of things. I might assume.
Because sometimes I start to think that most problem of the databases actually not the databases but the people who work with them. So basically,
yes,
like people can create interesting problems.
Yes, I mean it's not necessarily even related to people. I mean sometimes it's also obscure circumstances. I mean it's like things that shouldn't happen and natural disasters, I might almost say. So we've saw some interesting stuff there recently.
Something fishy from recent, of course, then you can disclose details.
Yes.
Some crazy story from your recent practice.
Well, not recently, but I remember I had a case the other day. It's not this year, but I think it's 2 years or so. Somebody said create database XY, and the error message was file not found. How could it happen? So we first thought it was a bug or something. Just create a database and it says file not found. How could it happen? And we checked and checked and checked and couldn't figure out. And the answer was that somebody deleted the data directory while the system was running, did a fresh initdb, and then create database failed. That caused us a bit of headache because we couldn't explain what was going on there because file not found during create database. I mean, that's quite unusual, I would say. So that was one of the more funny encounters. I would say, yeah.
I remember things then people for security reasons used to delete the template databases and then trying to create something.
Yeah.
That I see, but something like this I didn't.
Yeah, it only happened once. I think that was one of the more obscure stories of things coming in. I mean, yeah.
So heading towards less obscure things. So then, for example, someone calls you up and says, well, we have problem with the database. Do you try to actually to predict internally what's going on? So like some sort of bet. I think those guys forget the index. I think those guys forget this and all that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You can judge from the question what's going on there.
Have you examples?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's going to be the same in your case, that you already, when you hear the tone, what's going on there, you already know you can guess the problem, right?
Oh, sometimes people do surprise me.
Oh yeah, that happens, but you have a tendency, do you? I mean, you've done this for forever, just like me. So there is some sort of tendency, like we are using ORM, and you already know what's going to happen, or we regularly check indexes, which means everything missing, or we didn't touch anything, or
the last one is most scary.
or what else? This classical issue, like, does it scale, right? And there is no data. I remember one case, somebody called me up and says, "Can you scale like Facebook?" And I said, "Hold on, what are you trying to do? How many customers do you have?" And he literally answered, "It's me and my brother. We just started."
Ah, okay.
Yeah, can you scale like Facebook? That was the first question, and it was two guys doing something.
Yeah, actually, then it goes to scaling things. It's most common problem of misengineering, which I personally facing. So then people try to scale before it actually is needed.
Yes.
So from which have you some, I don't know, free advices to people who want to scale Postgres for some reason?
Oh, well, run create index first.
it's the single one. Then that goes next. Then they have indexes.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what it is. I mean, just take a look at your queries. I mean, the answer for performance is usually in the queries, because without queries, there's no load. That's the simple answer. People get lost in graphs and charts, but the core thing is, a pie chart on performance is a painted version of a number. If you don't understand the number in the first place, it doesn't change if you paint it, right?
No.
So try to understand the fundamentals, right? And in terms of scalability, there are many things in terms of scalability. Could even be related to how long it takes the consultant to go to the customer. Even that is a question of scalability once in a while.
Yeah, because it's actually a very interesting question which people do ask, because many of our, I would say, more commercial competing technology, they promise actually very funny service that if something happens, we write you a patch, we send you a DBA, like for teleport or something sort like
Yes.
like this. So I often experience that people actually expecting that consultants working like simultaneously. Can you do this?
Well, you can work simultaneously by having enough consultants. But I give you one story. What happened? We had one customer request. They wanted to purchase, I think, 3 days or so, and the customer was in Kiribati. Do you have the faintest idea where it is?
It sounds far away.
Yeah, South Pacific, next to Tonga.
Oh,
It's actually the seventh largest country on Earth by size, but it's only water. I think highest elevation is 6 meters or something. And I think it took it would have taken us 3 days to get there and 3 days to go home, because it's something like 6 hours west of Hawaii or so. So on-site services can be tricky depending where the customer is, right?
yeah, sure.
So it's like going to Tajikistan. It's just not around the corner.
Yeah, it's actually like almost as far away as United States.
Oh, well, yeah, but it takes longer to get there, I presume.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so there was a question actually on our chat, and
Yeah.
the person who asked this question retracted it, but because it was actually on my list as well, I will ask
Sure,
anyway.
go ahead.
So being experienced Postgres person working with many versions,
Yes.
etc., etc., we're asking actually almost everyone this sort of questions. Um, Imagine that you're talking to the beginner. What basic advices you can give in terms of learning databases in Postgres? Uh, Maybe retrospecting your own experience, maybe improving things which you would be probably doing better if you were living now and now learning Postgres and databases.
I would say that get started with some sort of SQL tutorial, some basic thing, look at do some book reading, and then set yourself a couple of small, practical, achievable tasks. Like, take some daily thing you might want to automate, like when did you feed your dogs, when did you purchase groceries and things like that, and try to make a simple, practical thing, and try to experience how this works, how you would do that, and then load some data, or type in some data and see where it starts to feel uncomfortable. Try to ask yourself some practical questions, like you're searching for something, you got a typo, how would you handle it, stuff like that. So the best thing is really to take some simple things in your daily life, and ask yourself how would you do it in a database, and ask yourself some really practical things, like, as I said, typos, prefix, date ranges. How would you do that? And then ask yourself, okay, let's suppose reality changes. Such you have more than one dog, or you've got different types of animals. How would you change it? How would you transition your data model from only storing feeding your dog to let's say generic feeding of your animal, stuff like that, so that you also see not just create table, but also how to transition, and how to load, and how to transform and stuff like that. So I would always vote for some simple, get started with a tutorial, and not just copy paste, but then try to translate it into something in real world, like, I don't know, like your employees going on vacation, or calculating the distances from where you live to where you want to go on vacation, stuff like that. So I would say that hands-on is the key to success. The way I learned it was a bit different, but I would say that it's hands-on. That's the way you would do it.
Many people actually today suggesting for those who learn those things to start with very simple things like take a Jupyter notebook or take a Docker container with Postgres or install a cloud,
Mhm.
just to not spend things on, don't spend time on things like installing Postgres, configuring Postgres, things like this. I personally think it's not a good idea. What do you think? It's actually it's better just to concentrate on the task, like how database works, or experienced everything from scratch by hand.
It depends. I mean, if you really start as a really bloody beginner, create table, insert, stuff like that, I would go for some ready-made thing. But if you really want to understand how it works, I would say I would go plain metal, and start as early as you can, just to get a decent understanding. Like, suggest load 100 million rows, or make them and see where they end up. See what happens there. It depends on what you want to achieve. I mean, if you want to have deep knowledge, if you really want to understand how things work, that's the way to do it. And for God's sake, there are training courses out there. Uh, and But if you only want to be a user, like, a little bit of typing, a little bit of stuff, I would really you can go from you can start with something prepared, but it depends on what your aims are, I would say. But there's nothing wrong with a container or a Jupyter notebook or something like that.
Mhm. And if you're not a complete beginner, because well, one of our under other topic, which will be in the second half of our episode, okay, uh, if you're used to work with enterprise databases, like you're not complete beginner, you're probably a good Oracle DBA or database programmer or something like this, or DB2, whatever. Uh, you need something to change your mind to work with open source.
Mhm.
So maybe it's okay, it's easy to learn in our dialect, but what key things you actually need to learn to switch to open source?
Free your mind. And I'm taking this literally. I was talking to some TB2 people some time ago, and there was a huge discussion on extents and table spaces and blah, and extent sizes and blah, 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 and stuff like that. And I said, well, you want to use a database. What's the purpose of the database? Well, storing and analyzing data, right? If you create a table, do you think that somebody can come up with the idea that the data file is needed? Yeah, we could. So Postgres is doing that for you, right? So the purpose of a database is to handle data. So Postgres is going to create data files for you, right? And that was a game changer for them because they saw that it was so overburdened with pointless stuff which was imposed on them by IBM because even table spaces and storage management and blah and blah and blah. So if you're coming from Oracle, DB2, I think it's even worse with DB2. Free your mind. I mean, just understand the purpose of a database and that it's supposed to work for you. You're not supposed to work for the database. It's the other way around. And especially if we're talking to DBAs from some legacy systems, they got the feeling that they should do something. But the idea of a proper database is that the thing is supposed to do something for you, right? So I think this whole open source thing, in many aspects, is ways more focused on the task at hand.
So basically, in other words, it doesn't have SQL plus.
Yeah, yes.
Start with.
That's the absolute. That's the incarnation of saying to the user that we hate you. Right? So if we implement SQL Plus and give that as a command line tool, it's for me it's a way for a programmer to tell the users that we hate you from the bottom of our souls, right? That's the message. Every time I'm looking at that's the feeling I got, right? And I think I think Postgres tries to be different, by tab completion and cursor and stuff like that. At least if something is so painful, somebody's at least trying to come up with a solution. And that's what I miss in many commercial databases for many reasons. That maybe not so much in MS SQL, but in some of the other legacy systems, I got the feeling that sometimes they're torturing users on purpose. That's my feeling.
Yeah, basically, I saw many Oracle DBAs, quite experienced DBAs, because only very experienced Oracle DBA works from SQL Plus, not from some fancy GUI.
Yes.
And they log into PSQL and say, "What? What is going on? It's not a command line for a database. It's too easy."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is no. I mean, sometimes complexity is necessary. I mean, if you're doing, if you're flying to the moon, there's some intrinsic complexity there, but complexity itself has no value. It's sometimes necessary, but having something
it's around half a million bucks per license per year or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there is no value in pointless complexity. I mean, if you can make a fried egg, I mean, just make a fried egg. Why do you have to, wire your oven and then paint the wall and sometimes when I'm seeing guidelines, installing TB2 in 569 easy steps. That's telling me that somebody was too lazy to automate it for the customer. That's what it says. It says everybody has to copy those 569 steps in order to pray to the god of the Oracle. It's missing automation. It's Larry telling you that you are not worth that we just wrote a shell script to automate it,
So what do you think then about PostgreSQL configuration file, like several parameters for alto column, several parameters for checkpoint? Many Oracle people will say, okay, it's like we set up SGA target and that's it. Oracle does everything for us.
Well, I'm not sure Oracle does everything for us. What have the Romans ever done for us? I mean, So in this case, I think we can try to be more simplistic in Postgres. I mean, there's certainly some value in trying to reduce stuff, but it's not so easy because it's such a general purpose thing that there's always going to be a reason for one or the other parameter. But I do also think that there is some room for more simplistic configuration in some cases. I do see that. But I think if you're going into some automated thing, as we did recently, scale field, etc., the concept of a configuration template, which is 90% okay-ish, is certainly something people should aim for many cases. We should support all those fancy things, but it doesn't mean that everybody should necessarily see them in every aspect.
No, it's a good example is like write-ahead log settings, which used to be very unobvious with segments and things like this.
That's pointless. I mean, I'm still seeing that in some areas, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, and maybe faster actually than some other databases. Actually, we have a bit more questions in this area, and well, so the question was, do we really need to understand source code if we want to be an expert on PostgreSQL? But I preamble this question. How often do you actually take a look into PostgreSQL source code yourself?
Daily.
Daily.
So, it depends on what you consider to be an expert. I mean, if you are doing what we do, like 24/7 services and customer stuff and high-end Postgres, I mean, to me, it's more like a convenience thing to have the code around so that I can just look it up and see what's going on there. If you are a normal DBA with a normal job, you will most likely never take a look at the source code in your life. I think depends on which level you're working at,
And what's actually the difference? So basically, what brings you, which benefit actually taking a look every day to PostgreSQL source code? You just see how how the program flow goes, or you take a look on some comments there which are not covered in documentation. What does it mean, taking a look in source code?
Yes, I can give you an example of my previous excursions. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, I was giving a presentation on s01e05 and the new storage thing for update, s01e05. And I wanted to know how a row is inserted because there was a question on posed by somebody. How does this line pointer stuff work in s01e05? Because it's different. And I had to look it up because that's the way. That's the only way that could be done, because it's quite a new technology, etc. So I was looking up how s01e05 is putting a tuple into a page because I needed it for the presentation, right? The other day, I was looking up. It was some obscure row-level security thing, which we wanted to know how it works precisely with public policies behind views and stuff like that. So there was some strange thing with security, a leak-proof function and stuff like that. So I was looking up something along those lines. Then I was the last thing I was looking up. Let me figure out. I think it was I was looking for a hook. We wanted to write some extension thing for a client. I was looking for a hook, and grab the hook is faster than looking up the hook in the documentation. I think something like that. So it's not like the simple questions like some syntax thing. It was more like deep stuff. How is the optimize? I remember the other day I was looking up. If you got a parallel query and it's reading 10 million rows, why is the estimate 3 million? Where does this number come from? Right? And it's just easier to look up the formula, because what would you Google? You know what it is. So that was basically the reason. So I think for the normal DBA, it's not the problem, but it certainly is for us.
At some point, I used to say that you probably need to go to the source code, then you try to Google the solution and see your own blog post or something like this.
That's the point. Yeah. So if I'm writing blog posts, I'm sometimes verifying that what I'm writing is actually true.
Yeah.
So, and I also like the regression tests. I'm regularly looking into the regression tests because it's easier to find code samples.
Okay. That definitely makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Source, test, regress, SQL, grep.
Yeah. What other favorite tools do you use actually? Maybe
do
a
what?
text editor or
To do what?
well, to work with Postgres.
To look up the source code, I'm using VI.
Yeah.
That's enough. grep and VI, that's okay.
Actually, a nice question from Nikolai, who probably flying somewhere but has some internet connection. So he asked through the chat, how much does it take usually to write a blog post which you write?
And if I'm writing a blog post, I'm done in half an hour.
Half an hour?
Yes.
So you're like a proper person for marketing? Like
no, I'm writing about stuff which I've researched before, and which I just might have seen at the customer, or which just might. I mean, some posts take longer. I think the set heap one took me half a day or so, because I really had to do some research and then put stuff into that. There are some which also took a bit longer because it takes a little bit of testing. But I think today we published something about upgrades.
That was yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah. It's a typing exercise. It's like takes me maybe an hour, maybe, but usually it's just.
No, that's quite efficient. We have actually another question, which could be probably like a topic for a week or for entire season of our podcast. So I will just reduce it slightly. So the question was, which parameters as a DBA you have to modify to have a service with high demand, that's to say very concurrent based on your experience. I would say it's like really a season of talking in this format. So let's concentrate on something. So I split this question in two actually. So first question, are there some parameters in PostgreSQL which you always change and never like use default?
Track IO timing.
And second is, for example, okay, let's take some small part, concurrency. Yes. Is there something which improves concurrency from your point of view?
Well, the first thing is always pg-stat statements, track IO timing. Then we know the query, and then we see how to start. But without data, there is no such thing as optimization. So pg-stat statements, track IO timing, track functions, and then see what's going on there. Because then you know the workload and stuff like that. Once you have that, everything is open. But of course, you might change some memory parameters, logging, etc. But track IO timing, first thing. Absolutely, first thing. And pg-stat statement, sorry.
Yeah, so basically, actually, many people are telling that we don't want to have this overhead
of 1%.
That's significantly more people than 1% who tell this.
yeah, but the overhead is 1%. I think Stephen Frost gave me a number. 0.7 is, I think, what they came up with. They could barely measure it. And Stephen Frost is capable of measuring this stuff.
Yeah, he's capable of measuring.
He's capable of measuring stuff. But I think the number was 0.7%. So we bargained on noise. I keep telling people it's 1%, but I never even found the overhead. I couldn't see it. So
yeah, because how you can measure that? Yeah. Well, okay, you can use perf, but it's like more drastical and more invasive.
But even if you run pgbench 20 times, you got way more fluctuations with pgbench than you would ever get with pg-stat statements, in my judgment.
Yeah, well, that's true. And what about concurrency? So what's actually specific about concurrent workloads today? So should you consider something specific if you plan a high concurrent environment for your database, or it's just like 20 years ago?
Well, it depends if it's a locking, if it's a locking thing or heavily update. It's of course a different story. If it's selection only, what I saw the other day in Africa was somebody who tried to run queries with 400 worker processes.
It's Java approach, yeah.
No, I said 400 max parallel workers per gather.
Mm.
So just to make my point, I saw your face already that cannot end well, right? It didn't.
Yeah,
so yeah, don't over optimize, those parallel things.
Yeah.
Or de-optimize, I would say.
Nicola is again with the question, which is actually like follow up to the diagnostics tool and things like this.
Yeah.
What about wait event analysis, active sessions, sampling, pgstat activity, performance insights in RDS? They are alternative to pgstat statements, or you can use them both, or whichever you prefer.
I think you mean ask 10 people, you will get 15 answers. Whatever leads to the result. I mean, one guy who happens to sit over there during daytime, Lawrence Albe, he has a great fetish for log files, right? I don't. I like the system statistics more. I mean, at the end of the day, the outcome is the same. It depends on how you approach stuff. So I like pgstat statements, and then maybe use log sampling later on.
I would say actually, I personally like both, because with pgstat statements you can grab a quick look what's going on, and then you can dig into a log file to figure out what was there actually.
I would say there is a reason why both things exist.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, you want to fix a problem. The question how you do it is of secondary concern. So just get it done, So whatever works for you. I mean, everybody has his systematic approach, and
systematic approach. Everybody, it's like.
I'm talking about the Postgres consultants like you and me. Yeah. I mean, you got your approach, I got mine, and both are working, so it's okay. Because we do have an approach, I assume, right?
Yeah, because without approach, we would not be here probably.
Yes, most likely, yeah.
And we'll be probably screwed up by our customers.
Yes.
So moving slightly forward. So of course, you experience in many things like talking to enterprise people to substitute old Oracle, IBM DB2, etc. with Postgres. And recently, many people actually agree that it's the case. So lots of old enterprises are going open source. What's the main reason from your experience? Why people do this?
It's wonderful. Larry Ellison is such a gracious man that he's actually paying for our marketing, not just for mine, even for yours, by raising prices, sending people license audit. I mean, the reason is that Larry is so gracious that he's sending everybody over to open source by torturing them with pricing and unnecessary complexity and so on. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's our extended sales department.
Oracle is our extended sales department, absolutely.
But actually, Postgres exists for more than 20 years now, so like slightly more than 20 years. Why this development is quite recent? So did Oracle done something like crazy and everyone tries to catch up, or Postgres improved, or whatever? What did happen?
I think both. I had a case in Germany the other day. A government institution was running a benchmark on the new commercial database. And they ran a benchmark and ran their system for quite some time. They had a license audit. And during the license audit, they told them that they have exceeded their license for 11 seconds. And that's going to cost them 250,000 euros. None of us can make such a wonderful sales pitch for Postgres. Nobody. If you have a company, or in this case, a public institution, that's going to pay $250,000 for 11 seconds of benchmarking, there is no argument anymore why you would want to get rid of it. The only question is where you're going to go.
And how?
Well, yeah, that's the next question. But they're going to kick them out big time. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, if that's the way how you handle your customers for charging them $250,000 for 11 seconds, it's game over. And it's not like, I don't like tomatoes, let's eat cucumber. And let's go back to tomato tomorrow because I feel like tomato, right? This is like, not you again. Whatever happens, you're not going to enter this room anymore, right? You're banned for a lifetime. They are not going to sell them a pencil anymore. Even if they give them a pencil for free, they would burn it most likely. So, and I was going into a huge international organization. So one with, let's say every country on earth is a member of this organization, and money doesn't matter, right? And I saw hate pictures on the wall, and that doesn't happen because they are mean people. That happens because they were treated badly, by the product, by licensing, by auditing, by general behavior. People don't put up hate posters on the wall just because they are nasty people, So there is a reason for that. And of course, you make a profit, we make a profit, open source people make a profit once in a while. But you can overdo it. There is a thing like profit, and there is a thing like squeezing, and there is something people consider to be abuse. And if you feel abused, that's not something you can fix with a candy bar anymore, right? And that's what's happening in the Oracle market at the moment.
But actually, some people trying to fixing that with Candle Bar. Basically, I would say in some sense, mainstream cloud providers do this. So they basically offer much more torture, but it's like packed beta. So basically, you will pay more and more and more, but basically, it would be like semi-open source, but they sell you convenience.
Yes. What one of my colleagues keeps saying, one of our guys in Africa keeps saying, in the absence of value, price becomes an issue. So if value is convenience, performance, being able to access it quickly, availability, whatever, if there is value, if it does something for people, it's okay. But if there's no value, or if value is not sufficient, price becomes an issue. If you go,
so now we're talking about Oracle Cloud.
Yes, well, exactly. I mean, if let's say Azure, Amazon, or whatever is, let's say, 5 cents more expensive than whatever, if people see a value there, you can get it quickly. It works for me. All the stuff is there. I understand it. Payment is easy, etc. People are not going to purchase for that. I mean, if you go to a favorite Italian restaurant, the price for the pizza you're paying is certainly higher than the price for the than the price of the ingredients. But there is value. It's not raining on your head. The desk is nicely prepared. The waiter is friendly. It's served, right? So obviously the price of your pizza in your favorite restaurant somehow corresponds to what you preserve as value. But imagine going to a pizza store. The guy is going to shout at you, is going to check if you actually drank from some other bottle, and then he's going to send you the policeman to check if you've taken a toothpick or something. You would never go back there again. And that's exactly what an Oracle license audit is. It's like the waiter coming and inspecting your bags, when you are having a dinner for two with your wife, right? That's a license audit. That's really sticking something nasty in your face. I want to feel your pain, right? And with cloud computing, there is no such guy. It's a license audit.
Yeah, it's everything is automatized.
Yeah, exactly. So at least you can. So I know exactly what you want to say now. At least you can sort of predict the price. But you could theoretically, So in the absence of value, price becomes an issue. And with on-prem Oracle license pricing. There is no such thing as value that remotely corresponds to price.
Yeah, so basically like Solaris or HPUX, they used to be quite good operating systems, but they're extremely overpriced comparing to the things which Linux can bring.
It has to be, because I assume that the whole turnover people are creating with Spark CPUs are smaller than what Intel is investing in R&D.
Yeah.
So it has to be inferior in the long run. It's that simple, in my judgment.
Yeah, well, at least it's a good illustration.
Yeah. And the same with HPUX. I mean, what Linux is putting into development, I mean, whole community and enterprises, etc., is magnitudes higher than what they could earn with HPUX, AIX in 50 years, most likely.
Interesting question, actually. Is it the same with Postgres right now? So basically, from your judgment, Oracle still invests lots of things into the technical stuff inside database comparing to modern Postgres community, or it's like now Postgres community actually moves faster?
I don't know, but I think that it's a lot harder to write an extension for Oracle core than to write it for Postgres core. I read something the other day that I think they're sitting on 25 million lines of code or something, and then if you change a bit here, 600 things break and stuff. I think they got an issue maintaining code. That's at least what I read on the internet. Of course, I cannot verify because nobody sees
And
the
nobody
code.
knows.
Nobody knows. That's the point. But I would say that it's easier to work on an open source project because it's more accessible. It has to be, because otherwise nobody would work on it. Yes, natural Darwinism. If you don't document, nobody's going to look at your stuff, right? And therefore, it's self-enforcing quality rather than self-enforcing inferiority.
Yeah, sure.
That's one way you could see that. There's no Darwinism in a commercial project.
Yeah, it's only product vision and some wishes from important customers.
Yeah, put in a million lines of shit and it's never going to go away.
Actually, it's interesting because the things you just explained, they, from my point of view, are more obvious for developers, for technical people who work tight in the community, with community, etc. But large commercial customers, they actually have some sort of, I don't know, they're afraid of such open source approach. They're afraid of transparent system who is developed by nobody knows who, and they want actually their lines of code which are not exposed to them. What to do with those people? What's
Do they
wrong
still
with them?
exist? I think they're getting, they are not so many as they used to be. I think there used to be more. That was a major issue. I remember talking to an organization 4 years ago, and they explicitly said, we don't want to use primitive software. After a small increase in license fee, they were talking about strategic partnership. Same guy.
Okay.
So it's changing, I would say.
Actually, many commercial enterprises, while they're making migrations, for example, they tend to do a good old thing. So they try to take, for example, an Oracle, substitute it with Postgres, but trying to avoid any change. So basically, like, let's put it here, and it would be like the same. We use the commercial backup, we use this and that from our infrastructure. What do you advise those technical managers who trying to minimize damage from moving to open source like this?
It depends on what kind of infrastructure you're sitting. I mean, if you're, I give you an example. We got one customer, they produce weather equipment. You just the rain sensor and wind speed stuff, and they pack it up, ship it to the Sub-Sahara or to Tajikistan or to some remote place somewhere, and there is no such thing as update. There is no such thing as a new version, because this thing is going to be sent to a farmer in the outskirts of whatever place, Congo, let's say, and it's gonna stay there forever. So on the other hand, you got highly flexible container infrastructure with continuous integration, etc. Right? So some years ago, I saw a public bid by the American Navy, and they put out a 50-year support contract. 50 years, because it was about an aircraft carrier.
Okay.
So depending on what you got, you might be super conservative because don't touch, because it makes no difference anyway. And in some cases, you might want to be super agile. And depending on what type of requirements you got, you will need different strategies, I would say, right? So if you're a super nice hipster startup from Silicon Valley working on music recommendation or whatever, hipster something,
most likely you'll upgrade your Postgres like once a year for alpha release or something like this.
or you deploy 50 of them a week or whatever. But if you let's say if you're running a point of sale station in a supermarket, there's no point to be hipster, because 20 years ago you were counting the pieces of butter somebody bought. In 30 years, you're going to count the number of pieces of butter somebody's trying to buy. There is no innovation in purchasing potato in the supermarket. I mean, there might be with self-scanning.
Now you can pay by card.
Yeah, but that's not. You're still shipping out apples and potato and butter and cheese.
And now the scales recognize the type of potato you're trying to.
Yes, but let's say for the previous 30 years, it was about counting potatoes or whatever. 3 bottles of vodka, right? Russian water, I think is the translation.
Yeah, something like in that direction.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. So I think there is no overall always valid strategy, maybe.
Yeah. I'm thinking about this as well quite often. What sort of like barriers facing enterprises when they try to migrate to open source? What they need to change in mind to achieve that most efficiently? And then in some cases, I'm starting to think that okay, they need to stop thinking enterprise. They try to figure out that, I don't know, you can try this backup solution and then you can try this backup solution. You probably should be conservative about backup solution, but at least in open source, you can figure out in 2 years, this one is better. In 3 years, it would be another one because it's like under active development, something like this.
I would say that the biggest thing we've seen is internal bureaucracy. So if you're in a really big corporation, I think the limiting factor is internal bureaucracy, permissions, this whole thing. I think technology is the easier part. The bigger you get, I think the limiting factor is more bureaucracy than anything else.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to see the test data, stuff like that. How can we test with no data, things like that. And then it takes half a year to range test data, and then
we open your outgoing port and close incoming port because who cares about the TCP/IP? It's 2 different departments.
Yes.
Yeah, a question we got actually. You're talking free your mind, but technical people are really under pressure of people who influence their minds, so technical evangelists and so on. So do you think like Postgres propaganda is too hard in this way? So declaring most advanced world's most advanced open source database, it's to push on the technical people.
I think it is. It is the most advanced open source database I'm aware
So
of.
it's not pushing, but it is the database which most advanced.
I believe it's true. I really believe it's true. And I'm not saying that for marketing reasons, because we're in Postgres television, we are Postgres people anyway, right? So we're not convincing anybody here, I assume. So we know the thing anyway. I really believe that's the case. It's the best general purpose open source database. I mean, in some corner cases, there might be a special database for something, right? But in overall, I truly believe that. It's not marketing, I would say. I believe that from the bottom of my soul.
So 3 arguments why. Every one of us has some set of arguments why Postgres is the best. What's yours? I'm sure there are.
It's mindset. It's the mindset of the development process. For 20 years, MySQL allowed you to store the 79th of February, and it would silently eat it. We consider that to be a bug. It's a mindset thing. I don't believe that a system that allowed to store the 79th of February for 20 years, I know they changed it, has the right mindset to protect data in a reasonable way. So it's a mindset thing. The second thing is that it's perfectly documented, in my judgment. And the first thing is that it's really has a rich set of features. So if you want to do some fancy analytics, you can do it. If you want to run some own custom DNA, mRNA data type, you can do that. It's reasonably easy to learn. So I think, I mean, I'm biased. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm completely biased, but
it only took you 20 years.
It only took me 20 years. I mean, it's life sentence is 18, you know? So it took me the better part of 20 plus years, but still, I think if you really want to get something going, etc., it's still, given the complexity of what we're doing here, I think it's still a reasonably user-friendly thing. I would say that you can install it, you can run the query quite quickly, and it's bug-free. It's surprisingly bug-free. So when I'm looking at my personal track record, myself, I mean, me as a user, I'm finding 1 bug a year, maybe. Maybe. I mean, in a bad year. You know, I mean, of course, we got more because of customers and stuff. But me personally, looking at stuff, I think last year I found 1 bug. And it was something really obscure. Super obscure. If you got a composite data type out of 10 columns, and if you create a unique index on that, and then you add a column to this data type, then the unique index is not rebuilt.
Yeah.
That's not a bug per se where you could say, oh, Postgres is broken. You know what it is? It took me 20 years.
It is well-deserved bug.
Yes, it's something that nobody actually ever thought of trying for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that obscure. And if that's the only bug that comes to my mind, which I found recently, I mean, what else do you want?
Yeah, well,
I would call it stable.
It's actually pretty stable. I would say I saw more bugs in recent versions of Oracle when I used to work with it. Like, there used to be things like this. It's actually a question about this right now pop up in chat. Fsync bug. I wouldn't say that fsync was a bug. It was like some incompatibility with Linux. Or what do you think?
Well, I think if you look at where Linux is used these days, it's for digital cameras, it's for cell phones, it's for tablets. And when you hook up a USB stick to a camera or something like that, it's not like enterprise storage that stays there for the next 10 years. You disconnect it, you connect it, you disconnect it, you connect it, etc. So the idea of forgetting the writes, I can see the reason for that. But of course, it's not very suitable for a database. So maybe they should introduce something to control this behavior in a better way.
Actually, many people suggesting that days that everything gate was like quite discussed at FOSDEM once, for example.
Yes.
Many people, or in Ottawa at PGCon, many people are actually asking Linux developers, maybe like database should have a different sort of kernel, not that universal kernel on operating system. But well, it's like the same question like in Postgres. People do complain about too small shared buffers, but usually the answer of developer is like, we need to install this in the coffee machine. What will be if we install in coffee machine with 64 gigs of memory? It wouldn't work. So we keep it reasonably universal.
Yes, and I think with the kernel, it's the same. I mean, fsync is broken not just on the Linux level; it's also broken on the hardware level because everybody's lying about fsync anyway.
Yeah.
So it's the question is it one more layer of broken disk flush, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's one way to see it, but of course, it's not very satisfactory.
Yeah, it's like you always have some trade-offs.
Yeah, but I think there should be some file system mode or something where you can tell the thing, okay, if writes don't happen, just remember X gigabytes of data to try again, or there should be maybe some paranoia mode, or I don't know. I don't know enough about this.
Basically having different things like NVMe driver and, for example, something for flash card in photo camera, it would be already a good idea to change the behavior of fsync probably, or entire mechanism actually.
Yes. But the problem is that have you ever seen an fsync benchmark? How reliable is fsync? Have you ever seen a magazine where somebody ran a test on the credibility of fsync? The only test I've seen was transactions per second, right? Everybody wants transactions per second, but if you're paying your rent for your apartment, you don't want to. I mean, even if you're 10 times faster, you're still not going to pay 10 times more often, do you?
Sure.
So why is everybody so obsessed with transactions per second when load is a constant?
Because you can explain things on the conference.
Yes, I mean,
I'm a cool guy. I have big data, millions of transactions.
Exactly. If you're running a website, nobody's going to use your website more frequently if your database is 10% faster, because it's sleeping all day anyway.
Yeah, sure.
In many cases, load is a constant. So the question should be, okay, how can we achieve performance that is definitely good enough for what we're doing here, but offers 100% reliable 24/7? It's not like, okay, let's be as quick as possible and make it as fragile as possible. That's not what you want usually, do you? So this obsession with transactions per second, maybe sometimes you might want to rethink that, because what you really want is failures per year.
Yeah, exactly. Many people actually wanting multi-master or things like this. So multi-primary, as you should say probably now. But they do not count accurately what they want to achieve. So basically they introduce solutions which could break your database installation for many, many hours to save on 5 seconds of downtime time. That of downtime, then you fail over, for example.
Yeah, I mean, let's I consider multi-master or multi-primary or whatever the word is these days, actually to consider in most cases to be a design failure, because if you ask a question and I'm repeating the question, that's multi-master. We're both doing the same thing. We're not going to be faster, right? We're going to be slower. Because if we both...
that goes write scalability?
No, it doesn't. I mean, write scalability with multi-master is only available through sharding. I mean, if 10 servers are supposed to write the same data and coordinate, it can't be faster than a single server if everybody has to do the same work, right? It can't be faster by definition. Only if you shard it, then. If everybody's writing a subset of data, right? But if everybody's writing exactly the same data, 10 machines, and then there is coordination, how can it be faster? And let's suppose we do multi-master interviews. I mean, it's going to be a lot more complicated than just you being the boss and I'm answering, right? So how can this interview process with two masters coordinating each other be more reliable than you being the boss and me answering? No way. Right?
No way. It only brings complexity.
No, it only brings complexity and money for some people. That's it. There's nothing wrong with money, but the question is if it serves the purpose, and I believe it doesn't in most cases.
And another actually quite beloved question, which probably you facing regularly. Then you talking to Oracle people about migrations and things like this. It's quite common thing. We need real application cluster. What can you like propose for Postgres? What do you answer usually?
Well, first of all, you ask them why they want that. Then they usually go for high availability. And then you can tell them that go for patroni, more simplistic, blah, blah, blah. But the first thing is always question the reasoning. And then the answer is usually, yeah, it's an availability thing.
And to improve performance.
You can scale out the read replicas and blah, 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 right? So it's a standard question. But I would, first thing is always to question what's the purpose? Because if you nail them on the purpose, you're not fighting the trenches on what's the best technology, because the technology is made for a purpose. So if we can approach the purpose, we can find the technology which suits. I would say that's the way to go.
That would be an ideal world where we would not have any job. I'm afraid.
We will always have a job.
Yeah, well, we like slowly approaching our time limit, but we have a couple of interesting questions actually, so we can like finalize some funny statements. So the question is, what is your worst nightmare with PostgreSQL?
My worst nightmare?
Is it anything in 20 years, or you just do not see any sort of nightmares anymore?
We had one case where a storage system was broken, but not broken enough to be considered broken. So you write a megabyte of data, and what it did was it wrote a megabyte and 1 byte, which breaks your file system, etc. Or, you know, when everything was off by 1 byte, you know. So imagine the table with 1 byte at the beginning, and then everything is off 1 byte.
How do they achieve this?
Some bug, firmware bug in some hardware, whatever. And this was about a 7-digit numbers of life insurance policy.
So it was very critical data.
It was very critical data, and the backup system was facing the same bug.
I don't believe you consider this as a nightmare. It's like a challenge.
Well, it's what it is, I mean, if we are playing, Pokemon and you miss an arena or something, nothing is gonna happen. But if literally 1 million people pay for life insurance and it's gone for whatever reason, or maybe not gone, but half gone or inconsistent or whatever, it's a different thing. It's people's life savings. It's not just I lost my high score in World of Tanks or something like that, or I lost a flight, or I just I lost 6 bottles of whiskey in stock somewhere. It's no problem. Of course, it's not nice, but it's okay. But if it's about, life savings of 1 million people, that doesn't that at least it doesn't it affects me. It's personal. It's I take it personally. Let's put it.
Especially then you're responsible for that database in some way.
When you're looking outside the window and you say this could be this person, right? And that was pretty much it. But otherwise, nightmares, not many. I have to say. I mean, of course, inconvenience, hardware broken, blah blah blah. But it was never something that was the most scary thing that really put a large number of people in danger, I would say.
Yeah, that's quite obvious. Yeah, that's
Saturday morning, 10 o'clock.
Yeah. So, Hans-Jürgen, thank you for coming. It was very interesting conversation as usual, and I hope maybe in some next series of Postgres TV we invite you to talk about some new experience about Postgres. But anyway, that was Hans-Jürgen Schönig from Cybertech, and person who remembers PostgreSQL 6.5. Yeah,
Or
4, of course.
that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. As usually, subscribe to the channel to not miss the announcement. You can always join us via Zoom and ask your questions directly. And we have a file which is somewhere in the description. Anyway, I will put that. And you can just put your suggestions there, questions, and so on and so on and so on. If you have some questions to Hans-Jürgen, for example, you can write comments, and probably we'll redirect the questions to him, and he'll spend another half an hour to write another blog post to answer a question.
No problem.
So
I've done so many interviews this year, but this was by far the best one. Really, I really have to say thank you to what you did. It was just awesome. It was by far the best conversation I had this year. And I'm not trying to, get reinvited or something. I'm just really saying this honestly, best interview ever. Really, thank you for that one.
Thank you. My pleasure. I'm glad to to meet your expectations.
No. I had no expectations, but you beat them, so it's okay.
As we do as consultants.
Postgres consultants.
Yeah, great. So on this optimistic note, thank you once again, and bye-bye.
And Ilya, thank you for the interview. It's just heartwarming.
My pleasure. Great. Bye-bye.
Okay, see you. Ciao.